We have, and I have to go slow, every time when we introduce him, we've got to be very careful. His name is Mr. Dr. Pokwani. He's a senior manager for Quality Assurance of Assessment Unit, Schools Qualifications, and then we have the executive manager for the Qualifications and Research Branch, Dr. Umalusi. I'm sure you have been handed the program for today. In terms of how the day will run, I have introduced the panel, and we will have the CEO of Umalusi welcoming us. Thereafter, he will hand over to Dr. Liwayo to read the media statement in respect of the readiness of the system. Then the CEO will conclude on the basis of the statement. Then we will open the floor for discussions. Before I hand over to the CEO, I think we need to start with a commercial or a congratulatory note to Bafana Bafana. I'm sure everybody is aware that they've secured their ticket to North America next year by beating Rwanda 3-0 last night. And we are grateful for that. Thank you very much. Now back to today's business. I am now going to hand over to the CEO to give his opening remarks. Over to you, CEO.
Thank you very much, Vicky. Thank you very much, Mr. Lipota. Let me start by greeting the following people: members of the public, Umalusi officials, members of the media, ladies and gentlemen. I would like to express our appreciation to all media houses for covering this briefing, thereby ensuring that our message reaches all the people of our country. We meet here this morning to brief the public about the state of readiness of the public assessment bodies, the Department of Basic Education and the Department of Higher Education and Training, and private assessment bodies, the Independent Examinations Board and the South African Comprehensive Assessment Institute, to conduct, administer and manage the 2025 end-of-year national examinations in respect of the following: the National Senior Certificate NSC, National Certificate Vocational NCV Level 4, NATED Report 190, 191 and 3, General Education and Training Certificate, Adult Basic Education and Training, GETC ABET. Prior to presenting our report on the readiness of the system, let me take the opportunity to update members of the public about some developments in the sector, that is, the general and further education and training system of our education system. Regarding online provision, we have previously indicated that Umalusi does not yet accredit online schools. The reason is that there is currently no regulatory framework for online education. We have also communicated that the Department of Basic Education has been working on interim measures for the purpose of regulating online schools. Regrettably, not much progress has been made in this regard. In the interim, working with the Department of Basic Education, the Independent Examinations Board, IEB, and the SACAI, that is the South African Comprehensive Assessment Institute, Umalusi has produced the following non-negotiable requirements to guide assessment bodies in the registration and management of online schools and distance education providers offering the National Senior Certificate NSC examinations. These conditions are intended to ensure credibility and compliance with Umalusi's quality assurance standards and the integrity of the examination process. The non-negotiables for online schools registering candidates for the NSC examinations are as follows. The NSC examination must be written at a physical, registered examination center in South Africa and not online. The assessment body must develop and implement criteria to determine eligibility for registration. Register only reputable providers. Report to Umalusi on the online school. Distance education providers registered based on those criteria. The assessment body must attest to and be able to provide evidence that the provider offers the National Curriculum Statement, NCS, in grades 10, 11, and 12. The assessment body must ensure that learners registered for the National Senior Certificate examinations in grade 12 have passed grades 10 and 11. The assessment body must take responsibility for the designated examination centers where candidates write the examination physically. The assessment body must attest to the credibility of school-based assessment SBA marks submitted for candidates from online schools, distance education. Umalusi may request evidence of the credibility of these SBA marks. The assessment body is responsible for always ensuring full adherence to Umalusi's requirements for the quality assurance of assessments. All assessments developed and conducted for online schools must align with the National Curriculum Statement and applicable assessment policies. The assessment body must ensure the implementation of 3 levels of moderation for SBA, that is, moderation at school level, moderation at cluster level, and moderation at assessment body level. 3 levels, I said. We urge the Department of Basic Education to speedily finalize the guidelines so that as a system, we are able to establish the national requirements for the registration of online schools by provincial education departments and to indicate the requirements to be met for online schools to be accredited by Umalusi, amongst others. Now I'm going to be talking about the phasing out of N2 to N3 examinations. In terms of Government Gazette 49518, the NATED report 190, 191, N1 to N3 programs entered a phase-out period as from 1 January 2024, with the last date of enrollment on the programs being 31 December 2023. Accordingly, the last set of examinations for which Umalusi will perform quality assurance and eventually issue N3 certificates are the November 2025 examinations. As for the N2 examinations, they were administered for the last time in April 2025. Now I'm going to be talking about the internalization of NCV levels 2 to 3 examinations. Government Gazette 53015, which was published on the 15th of July 2025, directs that NCV levels 2 to 3 examinations be internalized and that Umalusi ceases quality assurance of the examination in question. The implication is that from now onwards, Umalusi is no longer involved in the quality assurance of NCV levels 2 to 3 examinations, including the issuing of certificates to successful candidates. The only NCV examinations for which Umalusi will continue quality assuring are those connected with NCV level 4. However, the levels 2 and 3 examinations will continue in the TVET colleges. Levels 2 and 3 examinations will continue in the TVET colleges. Now, on another subject, and that is the close monitoring of the Department of Higher Education and Training. Given the lapses in the conduct, administration, and management of its assessments and examinations, the Executive Committee of Umalusi Council, EXCO, has directed that the Department of Higher Education and Training be placed under the close monitoring of Umalusi during 2025. The objective has been to ensure that the Department of Higher Education and Training puts in place stringent measures to adequately address the recurring areas of non-compliance that Umalusi has identified over the years. If left unattended, the lapses in question could undermine the validity of the exams and the integrity of the certificates issued by Umalusi. On account of that, several rounds of engagements have taken place between Umalusi and the Department of Higher Education and Training, including inspection of the facilities and systems used by the Department of Higher Education and Training. Based on the reports submitted to Umalusi recently, we can confidently report that the exercise is yielding fruits. In specific terms, there is noticeable improvement in the systems used by the Department of Higher Education and Training to conduct, administer, and manage internal assessments and examinations. Umalusi will finalize a report on the outcomes of the close monitoring process in 2026 and will communicate it to the relevant stakeholders. Ladies and gentlemen, getting back to today's business, Umalusi is legislatively mandated to assess the capacity of both the public, that is the DBE and DHET, and private IEB and Sakai assessment bodies to conduct, administer, and manage national examinations associated with all the qualifications registered on the General and Further Education and Training Qualifications Sub-Framework, otherwise known as the NQF Levels 1 to 4. This is the sub-framework of qualifications for which Umalusi has the mandate to assure the quality. The details will be provided in the report to be presented by Dr. Dliwayo, and I'm, with the permission of the program director, handing over to Dr. Mary Antoinette Dliwayo. Over to you, Dr. Dliwayo.
Thank you, CEO. Greetings, everyone. The General and Further Education and Training Quality Assurance Act, Joint Factor Act number 58 of 2001, as amended, established Umalusi an independent statutory body to take responsibility for quality assurance in general and further education and training in South Africa. In terms of the National Qualifications Framework, Act number 67 of 2008, as amended, Umalusi has the mandate to develop and manage a sub-framework of qualifications at levels 1 to 4 of the NQF and related quality assurance processes. In accordance with that, Umalusi has concluded the audit of the state of readiness of the public, meaning the Department of Basic Education and the Department of Higher Education and Training, and private assessment body, that is the Independent Examinations Board, and the South African Comprehensive Assessment Institute, to conduct, administer, and manage the 2025 end-of-year national examinations in respect of the following qualifications. The first one is a National Senior Certificate. This qualification is assessed by the Department of Basic Education, the Independent Examinations Board, and the South African Comprehensive Assessment Institute. Followed by the National Certificate Vocational, levels 2 to 4. This is assessed by the Department of Higher Education and Training. The next one that is the qualification that we are responsible for is the NATET report 190, 191, NT to N3 engineering studies. This is assessed by the DHET. And lastly, the general and education and training, adult basic education and training, that is the GETC ABET. This qualification is assessed by the DHET, the IEP, and Sakai. In auditing the state of readiness of the system, Umalusi uses a framework that looks at various focus areas, including number A, the registration of candidates, B, the adequacy of the appointed personnel to manage the examinations, examination centers, and marking centers, C, the external moderation of internal assessment and question papers, D, the adequacy of security measures in relation to printing, packaging, storage, and distribution of question papers, E, the functionality of the systems used to capture learner marks, and F, the functionality of structures established to deal with and handle assessment and examination irregularities. Now, the audit process was conducted between 11 August and 9 October 2025 across all 9 provincial education departments. The overall goal of the audit process has been to determine whether the measures put in place by each of the 4 assessment bodies, meaning the DHET, the DBE, the IEP, and Sakai, are adequate to ensure the credibility and reliability of the assessment outcomes. The next section reports on the audit outcomes, starting with the number of candidates registered to write the examinations. Now, in terms of the size and shape of the system, over 1 million candidates are registered across 4 assessment bodies to sit for the 2025 end-of-year national examinations. The figures are based on final registration data that Umalusi has received from the assessment bodies. The breakdown of the candidates by qualification and assessment body is as follows. For the National Senior Certificate, now I'll give you the stats of the Department of Basic Education and Department of Basic Education. Now, the department has registered 766,543 full-time candidates. For the IEP, they have registered 17,427 candidates. The Sakai has registered 6,174 candidates. In total, 144 National Senior Certificate candidates have been registered for the 2025 end-of-year examinations. Coming to the National Certificate Vocational Level 4. This qualification is assessed by the Department of Higher Education and Training, and in total, 40,822 candidates have been registered for this examination. The next examination is the NATET Report 190, 191, and 3 Engineering Studies. For this qualification, the registration process has not yet been finalized. Lastly, we've got a General Education and Training Certificate, Adult Basic Education and Training, that is the GETC ABET. This qualification is assessed by 3 assessment bodies. Firstly, the Department of Higher Education and Training has registered 50,129 candidates. The IEP has registered 469 candidates, and the Sakai has registered 231 candidates. Therefore, for the GETC ABET 2025 examinations, 50,829 candidates have been registered. The numbers given in the table above, or that I've indicated, shows that the NSC accounts for the largest share of the total candidature. The DBE's 766,543 excludes the 137 and 18 part-time candidates, that is, these candidates that are out of school, who will sit for the examinations to improve their results achieved in the previous examination sitting. So taken together, the number shows that the DBE's full-time and part-time candidates amount to 903,561 candidates. All the NSC candidates have been issued with admission letters. Because the DHET is still busy finalizing its candidate registration numbers for N3 examination, with the expected completion date being 28 October 2025, Umalusi is unable to provide the numbers for N3 candidates at present. Based on the evaluation done for the rest of the qualifications, Umalusi is satisfied that all the candidates have been registered for the 2025 end-of-year examinations in accordance with the relevant assessment and examinations regulations. Similarly, concessions and accommodations have been granted to eligible candidates in accordance with related policies and regulations. The over 1 million candidates will write the examinations at about 9,400 examination centers spread across the 4 assessment bodies. For the NSC, the DBE has established 6,955 examination centers. The IEP has established 263 examination centers, and the Sakai 83 examination centers. So in total for the NSC, there are 7,301 established examination centers for these current examinations. The NCV level 4, assessed by the DHET has established 249 examination centers for this examination. For the NATET, as already indicated, the registration is still in progress. The GETC ABET, for the DHET, it has established 1,475 examination centers. The IEP has established 55 examination centers, and the Sakai has established 20. So in total for the GETC ABET, 1,550 examination centers have been established. As already indicated, Umalusi is not able at present to provide numerical information in respect of the N3 examinations, since the DHET is currently consolidating information and the expected completion date is 28 October 2025. The audit of the examination centers and storage points for the examination materials, including answer scripts, have been completed. As per the norm, the examination centers have been categorized into low, medium, and high-risk centers. The risk level or rating is determined by whether the center has a history of involvement in irregularities, whether the examination venue is a private center, especially a private college administering the DHET examination, and lastly, whether the center is administering particularly the NSC examinations for the first time. Based on the outcomes of the risk assessments conducted, Umalusi is satisfied that there are adequate measures in place across all assessment bodies to mitigate the risks identified at high-risk centers. Now, to ensure the credibility of qualifications, Umalusi subjected the question papers and institution-based assessment tasks for the NSC, NCV Level 4, NATET N3, and GETC ABET to its rigorous external moderation processes. The breakdown of the numbers is as follows in terms of the subjects that will be assessed for this year. For the National Senior Certificate, the DBE is going to assess 68 subjects. For the IEP, there will be 68 NSC subjects. For the Sakai, they are going to assess 24 subjects. In terms for the National Senior Certificate Vocational Level 4, for the DHET, 108 subjects are going to be assessed. The NATED Report 190, 191, and 3 is going to assess 26 subjects. And for the GET ABET, there will be, for the DHET, 26 subjects, and for the IEP 7, and for the Sakai also 7. After satisfying itself that all submitted papers and institution-based assessment tasks were designed in accordance with the standards set for each qualification, and that they fully complied with the relevant quality assurance standards, Umalusi approved them. In terms of printing, packaging, storage, and distribution of question papers, because the security protocols concerning the printing, packaging, storage, and distribution of question papers and associated materials are classified and therefore treated with strict confidentiality, Umalusi is unable to provide details in regard to this. We can just indicate that Umalusi is satisfied with the plans that are in place to manage the entire value chain. For the conduct of examinations, Umalusi is satisfied that all assessment bodies have adequately trained their personnel, meaning their assistant invigilators, their invigilators, chief invigilators, and other relevant personnel. That is to execute all the activities connected with the conduct, the administration, and management of the 2025 year-end examinations. Now for the marking processes, concerning the process for the appointment of markers, while the 4 assessment bodies are at different stages in relation to the appointments, Umalusi is satisfied that based on the work done to date, the process has been conducted in accordance with the assessment body specific policy for the recruitment, selection, and appointment of markers. Because the IEB, in respect of the GETC, and the DHET, in respect of the NCV level 4, the N3, and the GETC ABET, are busy finalizing the appointment processes, Umalusi is hard at work auditing the markers appointment to verify that the processes of these 2 assessment bodies align with the established criteria. Whereas Umalusi has identified a shortage of markers in certain of the DBE subjects, namely history and paper 3 for home and first additional languages, based on the reports submitted, Umalusi is satisfied that the DBE strategies in place, which include additional recruitment drives, early start of marking, and extending the duration of the marking period in the subject's consent, will ensure that these gaps are bridged by the time the marking of the scripts starts. All markers appointed across the 4 assessment bodies will be trained prior to the commencement of the marking. The marking process will unfold in a staggered manner, commencing on the 15th of November and ending on 18 December 2025. Umalusi will monitor the implementation of a staggered marking approach to ensure that the process is not compromised. For the capturing of marks, the outcomes of the audit process have confirmed that the mark capturing system used by each of the 4 assessment bodies are compliant with the requirements of Umalusi. In terms of the process, the assessment bodies will use a double entry system where one official captures the marks and another one verifies the captured marks. Importantly, all the assessment bodies will have their mark capturers trained before the start of the mark capturing process. Each of the 4 assessment bodies does have relevant structures to address and manage assessment and examination irregularities. Should they arise, irregularities will be managed in accordance with the regulations governing the conduct, the administration, and management of assessments and examinations. Now, in terms of the overall assessment, based on the report presented, Umalusi is confident that, by and large, the system is ready to administer the 2025 end-of-year national examinations. For that reason, Umalusi applauds the efforts of the DBE, the provincial education departments, the DHET, IEB and Sakai, and all other role players for doing everything humanly possible to uphold the credibility and integrity of the examinations. While the report flagged some areas of concern, the issues are not systemic in nature to compromise the overall credibility and integrity of the November 2025 examinations. All the concerns have been brought to the attention of the relevant heads of provincial education departments and the directors general of the DBE and the DHET, the CEOs of the IEB and Sakai, for the corrective actions to be taken before the start of the examinations. Umalusi encourages all assessment bodies to make use of the remaining days between now and the start of the examinations to tie up all the loose ends. For the road ahead, going forward, Umalusi will undertake the oversight monitoring of the writing of examination at a sample of examination centers across the 4 assessment bodies to ensure that assessment bodies mark the candidate scripts according to the approved marking guidelines and that the standard of marking is consistent and fair. Umalusi will conduct the verification thereof. These processes are meant to determine whether the assessment bodies conduct, administer, and manage the examinations in accordance with the prescripts of the regulations that govern the national examinations. All the processes converge around the need to ensure valid and reliable results and maintain the credibility of the assessments. The last 3 quality assurance processes that Umalusi will undertake beyond the capturing of the learner marks by the assessment bodies are the standardization of learner results, which is performed by the Assessment Standards Committee of Umalusi Council, and also the approval of the release of the learner results conducted by the Executive Committee of Umalusi Council, and lastly, the certification of learner results. The approval decisions of the EXCO of Council will be communicated publicly during a media briefing on 9 January 2026 at Umalusi. In approving the release of learner results, Umalusi confirms that the assessments leading to such certification was of the required standard across all qualifications for all examinations conducted. Finally, Umalusi will issue certificates to successful candidates within 3 months of the approval of the release of results by EXCO. The meeting of this deadline depends on the timely submission of the certification data by assessment bodies. Umalusi wishes the class of 2025 strength and determination as they enter the final lap of their journey within the general and further education and training system. I thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Dr. Liwayo. Having listened to the statement, I will now hand over to the CEO to give us the marching orders. CEO, over to you.
Thank you very much, Dr. Liwayo, and thank you once again, Program Director. The report presented by Dr. Liwayo makes it clear that by and large, the system is ready to do the conduct, administration, and management of the 2025 end-of-year national examinations. For that reason, I can report to the public that by and large the system is ready to administer the 2025 end-of-year national examinations. The highlighted areas of concern are not systemic and therefore will not put the overall credibility and integrity of the 2025 examinations in jeopardy. All the concerns have been brought to the attention of the relevant heads of department in the provinces and the Directors General of the Department of Basic Education, the Department of Higher Education and Training, the CEOs of the IEB and Sakai, for the corrective actions to be taken before the start of the examinations. We appeal to parents, guardians, teachers, and every other stakeholder to provide the necessary support to all the candidates during this critical period of their educational journey, and to do everything humanly possible to ensure that no candidate is unduly disadvantaged. Umalusi discourages communities from using the examinations as leverage for any form of protest action. It is the duty of every South African to jealously protect the education of our children. Umalusi will deploy its officials to monitor the conduct of the examinations to ensure full compliance with the relevant regulations. Concerning assessment and examination guidelines, we would like to issue a stern warning to all learners and teachers alike to refrain from involvement in any form of irregularity or cheating during these examinations. Umalusi berates and condemns this criminal practice with the contempt it deserves. Cheating compromises the integrity of our national examination system, which we are mandated to jealously protect as a quality council. We sincerely hope that the persistent phenomenon of teachers and principals refusing to allow registered candidates to write examinations in particular subjects will be a thing of the past. As we have said before, this unlawful practice is motivated by the desire to improve results. To curb it, Umalusi advises learners and parents or guardians to immediately report such incidents to the relevant authorities. Umalusi applauds the efforts of the Department of Basic Education, provincial education departments, Department of Higher Education and Training, the Independent Examinations Board, the South African Comprehensive Assessment Institute, and all other relevant stakeholders for doing everything humanly possible to uphold the credibility and integrity of the examinations. Finally, Umalusi wishes the class of 2025 strength and determination as they enter the final lap of their journey in the general and further education and training system. I thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, CEO. Thank you very much, Dr. Liwayo. Colleagues, that's the message of Umalusi in respect of the 2025 year-end examinations. We are now going to allow everybody in here and those on the platform to ask questions, make comments, and the colleagues to my right will respond to all those questions. I'm sure those of us who are here know how the mic works. If you want to talk, you just turn on the mic. Some of the mics will be green, and as soon as it turns red, that means you are the first one to speak. Can I see hands? And Tavi and Spiva, you will assist me with questions from the online participants. And I see Loni's hand. You can just turn on the mic next to you.
Thanks, ABET speaking. Tony Tinkle from ENCA. I don't know how many rounds of questions we have. I have a few just to follow up from the statement. But maybe the first one, maybe the first question would be...
Maybe, let me just check. If the mic is off, are you able to hear? Okay, thank you.
Yeah, Shronin Tinkul from ENCA. The first question is on the online schools. Maybe the two questions about the online schools. What has been the delay in finalizing the guidelines between yourselves and the Department of Basic Education? Or is it a DBE issue actually? And then it seems, but maybe I'm wrong, that Umalusi doesn't seem to have an appetite for online schools, or maybe just a recap of what the concerns are or what the issues are around the online schools, especially because we've seen that they're becoming a bit popular, but there are all these issues that keep coming up, especially around UCT, and I don't know if that's related to some of the issues that you raise. And then on the DHET institutions, when you talked about, I think it was the CEO that you directed that DHET be placed under close monitoring by Umalusi, and otherwise the exams could be undermined and the issuing of the certificates, if I got that correctly. Please, can we just get a clarity on what drew or raised the concerns around the higher education situation, and also is it particular institutions, or is it particular institutions, particular parts of the DHET system, or is it just broadly a problem within the DHET space, and how concerning is that? I have other questions.
Okay, we will come back to that. We would like to ensure that you ask all the questions you have before you leave here so that you report accurately. Thank you. Let's move to Elise. Oh, okay. Okay, you go first.
Miriam Takuza from the SABC. You did speak about the issue when it comes to some of the concerns, even though you were saying they are not systematic. Can you just go into deep with regards to those concerns? What are they? And also the high risk, low risk, and medium risk. How do you determine which schools are the high risk, low risk, and medium risk? And how many do we have? How many high risk do we have? Medium risk do we have? Low risk do we have? Thank you.
Thank you. Noria, can go back to Elise.
Elise Parker, I'm from the Pretoria Record newspaper. Congratulations to Umalusi. Sounds very good. I just need to hear, having a daughter myself who's a teacher, always queuing up in December to do some marking, if you could just give us some of the reasons for the shortage of the markers, and then especially for those subjects that you mentioned, like the history, what would these reasons be for the shortage of the markers?
Okay, maybe let's pause and allow the panel to reasons for the shortage of
Mary, what the first question was?
The classification of
no, I got that, the first one.
The concerns that we have. Maybe Noria, can you just repeat your first question?
Okay. I think it's the CEO that mentioned there are concerns that you have, but you said they will not compromise integrity, because I think you said they are systematic or not systematic. I just want you to go deep on that in terms of what are these concerns, please.
Okay.
Okay. Is this on?
Yeah.
Thank you very much. Thanks for all the questions. They are greatly appreciated. The space of online schools is the terrain that we have not entered into before. Online schools in the main were introduced by COVID-19. So we have not navigated the space before. So when it comes to the determination of policy, there has to be a lot of consultation. And also that there are a lot of complexities. It's not as simple as all that. There are a number of questions that arise. One of the questions that will arise is, when will the learners be taught? Are they taught online, live, or is it recorded lessons? And where it is recorded lessons, when do they interact with those lessons? At what time? Is it any time of the day? Is it at midnight, and so forth and so on? All those things have to be mediated. They have to be mediated. There has to be clear policy on those, and you have to consult on them. The other area just off the cuff that I can think of is the social aspect of the learner's development and growth as a person. For the majority of us who have gone to normal schools, we were trained in how to deal with other people in our spaces. You know, that in educational terms is called sociometry. To say, how do I deal with Dr. Dliwayo? How do I share the space with her? Life does not center around me as an individual. And one other thing that has to be looked into over and above that is look at you, look at me. We've got networks that were established at primary and at secondary school. What happens to the social activities of these learners in terms of the networks that they have to establish? So it's a very complex space. Very complex space is a minefield that we have to navigate very carefully before we can say these are the policies. I've merely scratched the surface in terms of the complexities I want to submit. Now, where Hloni is saying it would appear Umalusi does not have appetite for online schools. That is not true. That is very far from the truth. Otherwise, we would not be having these interim measures as we have the non-negotiables. We have the non-negotiables that are a placeholder as we are waiting for the policy to be established by the department. Umalusi has got appetite. In fact, some of them are running, but under those stringent non-negotiables. On the question of the close monitoring of the Department of Higher Education and Training, Umalusi is on record during the approval meetings where we said the department has administered a wrong question paper. System-wide. That is big. And in 2 years, I can't remember the years, but even including the beginning of this year, the students had to come and rewrite the paper because they'd been given a wrong question paper. The challenges are many. That is why we have had to engage in this kind of close monitoring. I can just cite one example of what comes to mind. The late start of marking, for instance. The people arrive at the marking center. The department is not ready to do the marking guideline discussions. The venue itself is not ready, and so forth and so on. So we are trying to say to the department, strengthen your processes such that we don't have those weaknesses that we have witnessed year after year in the past. Otherwise, like I said, they will compromise the examinations that we have to quality assure and undermine the certificates that we issue. Yeah, very important. And I must say, with the close monitoring, like I said in my statement, we're observing steady improvement on the side of the Department of Higher Education and Training. Where we say the areas of weakness are not systemic, it means that the impact is not going to affect the whole system and therefore compromise the examinations. The things could be sporadic. It could be an area where we say this question paper storage facility, we are not happy with it. Before the examinations commence, the head of department must take corrective measures, must take remedial measures to correct the situation here. And we'll make sure that before the examinations commence, that situation is corrected. Not systemic because, for instance, Dr. Dliwayo mentioned the shortage of markers. That is not systemic because, as she read the statement, it was clear that measures are being put in place to get additional markers so that by the time marking starts towards the end of November, beginning of December, already those markers will be in place. So I want to clarify that point. The distinction between low risk, medium risk, and high risk. Low risk, it is where there is potential for the examinations to be compromised. Potential, there have been no compromise. But as we do our monitor, we say, but here is an area of weakness that is likely to compromise the system if it is not corrected. Medium is where there have been incidents where examinations have been compromised, which incidents could be easily corrected moving forward. High risk is repeat offenders. Repeat offenders in a manner that really would compromise the examinations. And what does the department do? In such instances, they have resident monitors who are independent of the center. They are not teachers at that center. They are deployed to be resident every time a paper is written at that institution. That's how we categorize the examination centers in broad strokes. The question about the shortage of markers, as given by the colleague from Record, I missed your name, I must apologize. Elise. Elise, what happens here is that for people to come and mark, one, they have to apply. And where they would have applied, they must meet the requirements in terms of qualification and experience. It could be that we receive adequate number of applications, but they don't meet the criteria. It could mean that we do not have enough responses, because people have to make a choice whether they want to be at home during the school holidays or they want to go and mark. So it is up to the department to re-advertise and persuade people to apply. And even when we get the pool of people who have applied to come and mark, you still have to tick the boxes whether they qualify, they meet the criteria, and only then can you engage them. So it is quite a long process where we have shortages, and we are going to make sure that nobody touches the scripts of the learners when he does not have the requisite qualifications and experience to mark. Mr. Potter?
Yeah, I think you've responded. Let me see if we do have follow-up questions from here before we check what's happening on the online platforms. Follow-ups? Tony?
The very last thing that was said about clarity, just on when you say that some schools stop, that some schools will stop some learners from writing their exams because they want to improve their results. Can we just get clarity on that? Who does that and why? And then, sorry, my first question about the delays in finalizing the framework with the DVE. Just a comment on that. I'm not sure that came across at the beginning.
Framework for?
For the online.
Okay. What is the question?
She didn't get
What has been the delay in finalizing the guidelines with the
Okay,
department?
delays, okay.
Just lastly, pressing you on the CEO, I just want to know with the high risk, where are they and how many are they? The high risk centers, that is.
Can I respond with your permission, Mr. Leporter? The question asked by Mary, I'm going to start with your question. I'm not going to tell you how many they are. I'm not going to tell you where they are, because that is a security issue. We are not going to name and shame here and say, no, they are in this area, that area, because that's where then the people will go and compromise the system even further. It is something that is for us to monitor, to ensure that we don't have a recurrence of these anomalies in terms of the weaknesses that we have observed in the system. But we cannot make a public declaration and name and shame and overexpose those centers to the extent that everybody would know that Center A is high risk, therefore we have to be watching them, all of us. No. It is for the quality assurance body to keep this close to its chest and do its monitoring together with the relevant assessment body. So I'm not going to disclose, madam. I'm not going to disclose. When it comes to culling or stopping learners from writing, we have observed a phenomenon of school principals, and sometimes the district officials will also cooperate with them in this regard, to say learner A, B, and C are weak in these subjects. Therefore, we're not going to allow them to write lest they affect the results of the school. And we're not able to get the 80%, 90% that we need to get. Therefore, we are going to make these learners to write only 4 subjects, such that they are not counted in the overall pass percentage. That for me is criminal. It's criminal. If a learner is weak, it is the duty of the school, the principal, the teachers, to support that child to write the examinations at the end of the year and pass. Now, for you to say you're not going to write this subject, it's illegal. It's not allowed. Hence the appeal that if a parent or a learner faces such a situation, it is their duty to report to the officials. If not at the district, at the provincial level. If not at the provincial level, at national level. This practice cannot be allowed. Where people want to occupy a certain position in the league tables of the whole country at the expense of the future of learners, that cannot be allowed. That's what we're referring to. Now, on the delays, I tried to explain how complex the space is, and I gave a few examples. And I'm saying it is not for the department and Umalusi to sit and decide what the policy is going to be. We have to consult and navigate this very complex space that I've referred to earlier on with a few illustrations that I gave. And I said the illustrations that I gave are not exhaustive. The colleagues here could mention even more. To say these are the complications with online schools, which we have to thresh out with all the stakeholders before we can have the policy crystallize to the point where the minister could sign on it. Hence the delay. We have to consult to the extent that by the time we finalize the policy on online school, we'll be satisfied that we have covered all the bases.
Okay. Thank you, CEO. Do you have anything coming from the online platforms, Ntavi? No, Spiwe? Nothing? No, not for now. I think we've adequately responded, but I want to allow maybe the last, or maybe the second last round. Elise, you want to come back?
Dr. Committee, I'm just looking a little bit wider in the education field at present with what is happening at Fort Hare and with the University of the Free State. And you just referenced there that the leverage of communities perhaps using protests. Have you heard any pre-intelligence about this? Perhaps there's a spillover to the schools during the exams. I would just like you to reference and just extrapolate on that comment that you made about the protests.
Okay, that's number one. Frega?
Good day. I just wanted to check on the moderation papers. Basically, the question is, have any major issues been picked up during the moderation of the question papers? I know you mentioned that DBE is assessing in 58 to 68 papers. Could we have some indication on the major issues identified?
Okay, is that the last one in this round? Okay, maybe let's respond to that.
Okay. Should I respond, colleagues, or do you want to respond? Dr. Suju will respond.
Okay, I can maybe respond to the papers in terms of the DHET. I think we had a problem with the tourism level 4 paper, but then we actually bring all those role players together, the internal moderator, the examiner, and the external moderator, and we had a meeting, and we came to the conclusion, and the internal moderator did then change the paper so that it is to the standards of what Umalusi is maintaining. I also just want to say that at the end of the day, all question papers were approved by the external moderators of Umalusi. Thank you.
Can I start where Dr. Suji has left off to say, in response to Prega, that in the normal course of things, there's moderation. And with moderation, the paper could be approved at first iteration. But in some instances, it is at second iteration or third iteration. And that report we give with the approval statement at the end. We don't give it now. and we'll give the breakdown, and we'll also issue a report which we put on our website. We may not have the details at the point of the approval statement, but of course the report with specifics for the different assessment bodies and the subjects will illustrate all those points, and maybe not for now. Elise, I hope you don't want me to comment about the University of the Free State and University of... That is outside my scope of operation. Yeah. What we are trying to say here is that we have observed trends in the past where maybe there'll be a big strike in a particular area that prevents learners from accessing the examination centers on the day when they would have prepared for the writing. Can you think of the psyche of a learner who's ready to go and write, or yourself ready to go and write? And here you come, the streets are blocked with burning tires, or you can't get transport because the taxis are on strike, or you are stopped by members of the communities who say, no, nobody's going to write examinations here. We cannot subject the future of our learners to such protests. That's the appeal. It is a generic appeal out of the observations that we have had in the past to say, please, if anything, let us protect the education of our children, jealously, for that matter. That is where it comes from. Not from Forte, not from the University of the Free State.
Thank you, Dr.
Does that cover it? Okay, Tony wants to come back. Yeah.
Thank you. Maybe just a quick one. I believe last year some issues with the marking guidelines were flagged. I think it was like 44 something that was flagged. Can we just get clarity or an update just in terms of any issues with the marking guidelines before this year's exams begin? And then what was the other thing? And then just things like identity theft, is that an issue? People writing for others, are things like that an issue? And what is being done to make sure that my twin, for example, doesn't write for me, or things like that?
Okay. Should I respond, Vicky?
Sure. Go ahead, Sue.
Can I just say, we all understand what marking guidelines are. They are guidelines, they are guidelines, they are guidelines. In my day as a teacher, they used to be called memorandum. We now call them guidelines because there's some flexibility that comes into it. It's a guideline. And we are saying, because we are all professionals and experts in economics, if we are economics markers, accounting, they remain guidelines that have to be discussed and debated. And there could be a colleague who comes, for instance, in a subject like history, to say, but a child, when he responds like this, he has to be credited. That has to be debated and mediated. But finally, Umalusi becomes the final arbiter to say, do we allow this answer to be marked correctly? At that point, that is communicated nationwide at all the marking centers, and then the same standard is maintained. So that there should be no contestation around those marking guidelines. What Tony is referring to with her twin, writing for her, is what we call ghost writing. Now, what happens is that in the school setting, the teachers will know the children, but even with that, the candidates still have to present their IDs and their documents to say, I've got my examination timetable, here is my ID. The teachers know the children. In the case of the private candidates, it becomes even more stringent. More stringent because those people are presenting themselves at the exam center for the first time. If you don't have your ID, you will not be allowed to come and write. Timetable with the subject that you have to write, plus your ID, so that there can be positive identification of the person who's going to write. Because if Dr. Gliwayo writes for me, for instance, accounting, and I pass with a distinction, when I go to do BCom at the University of Pretoria next year, I'm going to fail. Because it is Dr. Gliwayo who knows. I don't know. So there are those systems in place to ensure that we don't have ghostwriters in the system. Vicky.
I think we've covered a lot of ground. Umalusi is saying the system is ready. There may be issues based on the interactions that the Office of the CEO has had with the heads of the institutions responsible for the assessments and exams. We are confident that the identified issues would have been corrected by the time the examination starts. So this means we have now reached the end of our media briefing. The CEO is available and everybody here. I've already received requests for one-on-ones. We are here, the CEO is here, we are available. Thank you very much, and to everybody on the online platforms, we thank you very much for carrying us to the South African public. Thank you very much. Before we close, I am now going to ask Dr. Suji to give Umalusi's closing remarks. Sorry, I forgot. Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you, Vicky. Thank you, Program Director. As we come to the end of our media briefing, it gives me great pleasure to extend our sincere gratitude to all of you for your presence at this State of Readiness media briefing. As the program says, my role is to thank different parties for their respective roles in getting us here today. Thanks are due to particularly the following people: our CEO, Dr. Mafu Rakometsi, for providing visionary leadership and for steering this process. I convey a special word of appreciation to Dr. Mary Antoinette Liwayo and Mr. Dr. Pokwani and their respective teams for being the foot soldiers of Umalusi in this process. You worked hard, carrying out the essential and high-effort task of collecting information, synthesizing it to form the evidence that enable Umalusi to make the pronouncement on the readiness of the system to administer the 2025 end-of-year examinations. I also thank the public relations and communications as well as the ICT teams for working tirelessly to successfully deliver this media briefing to internal and external stakeholders. Similarly, I thank all the other Umalusi officials for their varied contributions. A special word of thanks to all assessment bodies for making sure that they deliver the examinations to the expected standard. Importantly, I wish to thank all the media houses for covering this briefing, thereby ensuring that the message of Umalusi reaches all stakeholders across the length and breadth of our country, South Africa. I would like to conclude by wishing the class of 2025 all the best as they prepare to enter a new journey of their lives. May you all have a safe journey as you travel back to your respective destinations. But before you leave, please join us for a finger lunch. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Dr. Suji, for the votes of thanks, and thanks once more. So the finger lunch will be ready at 11:30. In the meantime, the CEO is available for you to engage with him and his panel. Thank you very much. In the meantime, we still have coffee and teas outside, and yeah, Shoni, you requested. We are here.